All right, good afternoon, everyone. Today's Thursday, June 20th, 2024, Bond Oversight Committee, 11:30 a.m. First off, we're going to do a roll call. Alfonso Lopez, Chair, here. Ms. Gina Blackman.
Here.
Chad Conrad.
Present.
Abraham Camejo.
Here.
David Flatt.
Present.
Matthew DeFalco.
Here.
Byron Goins. Are you here virtually, Byron? Hearing none. Robert Gertison. Excused. Todd Peterson. Yvette Williams.
Here.
Somebody just get on. Is this you, Rob? All right, Rob. Rob Gertison, we have the roll call going. We do see you present. Can you hear us fine?
Yes, can you hear me?
Perfect. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
All right. Cool. Moving on to 1.01, the flag salute. Will you all please stand? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yeah, thank you. All right, moving on to 1.02, adoption of the agenda. I will give you guys all a few minutes to go over the agenda, review. For the record, also Mr. Byron Goins. Can you hear us, Byron?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. We'll mark Byron Goins also present. Thank you. Yes. Oh. I'm not sure. That's true. For our liaison trustee, Ms. Laura Brooks, are you present?
I am present, thank you.
Just for the record, you want to make sure for the record. Thank you, Lola. If everyone has reviewed the agenda, I'll open it up to a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
We have a
I'll
motion on the floor.
I'll second.
We do have a
Yvette Williams.
second from Ms. Williams. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Hearing none, motion passes. All right, moving on to 2.01, the approval of the minutes for, approval of the minutes. We'll give you guys a few minutes to respond. Go ahead.
Chad Conrad, for the record. My name needs to be added as members absent from the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad. Are there any other corrections or typos, anything anyone would like to bring up?
This is Gina Blackman Taylor for the record. There's just a small typo on page 2. Mr. Conrad is not the fiancé and investment liaison, although it'd be fun if he was.
Mr. Chair, this is Matthew DeFalco. Is it a good time to make a comment about the minutes or about the?
Sure. Absolutely. For the record, Al Lopez. Go ahead, Matt.
Just wanted to thank the staff. This was really extensive, putting the minutes together in the past. I think we had that conversation, so I appreciate the work going into that.
Are there any other comments, corrections, amendments need to be done to last month's minutes? Hearing none, I will open up to a motion to approve last month's minutes?
I can make that motion, Matthew DeFalco.
We have a motion on the floor,
Second by Dave Flat.
second by Dave Flat. Thank you, Dave. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. All right. Now we're moving on to 2.02, reports by the chair and liaison representatives. First up, Mr. Chad Conrad.
Thank you. This is an update, actually, I think would have been for the last meeting. I was absent in the last one, but Mr. Fouts and I met prior to the last meeting to review process, procedure, kind of the underlying calculation spreadsheets behind the budget allocations and the cash flow sources and uses. And I think we had a good productive meeting for about an hour or so, and no anomalies, no issues to report. Just a good meeting, good information. That's it.
Thank you, Chad. Moving on to Mr. Abraham Camejo, Construction.
Thank you, Abraham Camejo, for the record. Since the last meeting, I was able to take a tour, I attended the presentation at Indian Springs regarding that construction build for the high school, as well as met with members at Mount Charleston regarding Lundy Elementary School, and trying to stick into the presentation that Clark County School District will be giving us in a little bit. I did a personal walkthrough of the school to look at the water damages and just the outside walk of the facilities. And to my surprise, I was pretty saddened to see that our children's belongings were still in the classroom. So if the communication has been going through Clark County School District regarding the school being closed, why didn't we ever coordinate for the belongings to be picked up, put in a box, and have the kids and the parents pick their belongings after a whole year? I saw the repairs that has been done with the report that's been provided with the flood damage assessment report, and just jumping to the structural engineer's report. It says, the preliminary assessment of the conditions of this building, it states that how the flood went around the building itself, where it did cause damages to the parking lot, but those damages have been repaired. Also, that the school district had a contractor go up there to, fix the foundations and everything. But the question is, has there been any follow-ups of the site and everything? So just to fast forward with this report, at the end it says, in our professional opinion, the main structure may be occupied after the temporary measures of supporting the storage room are completed. I walked around there. The school looks decent. The power's working. So I've had a fun interaction looking into this, and I strongly believe that busing our kids from a 5-star school to a 1-star school at Indian Springs is still not the correct thing to do. So obviously, this is going to be a continued further discussion. I wanting to continue to work with everybody from the school district to have this conversation so that we can, go take a look at the building and actually do a real assessment and get a real evaluation of the cost. Things like the septic tank. If this was a house with the same square footage, I have contractor friends that would install this from anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000. But because this is a school district and prevailing wages, estimates can be anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000, even including with the leach field. I don't know if we had any bids for this or any relating to the cost of these repairs. I would like to have that discussion to see these repairs so we can put numbers to this reinstalling like a gas tank for the school. It's not that expensive. It's actually really easy to do. Plumbing, I personally have done this for years, with 25 years as a general contractor. So that's my report. Just want to make sure that we can have this discussion with everybody here on the board, and we can talk about the construction effects or the damages, and to actually be able to determine if the school needs to be closed, open, remodeled, demoed. What's the next plan? So that's my report in a very short terms. And so I'll just wait for the further presentation from our friends here. Thank you all.
Thank you, Abraham. Robert Gertison, Design. Robert? You have anything to report on? Looks like. Robert, can you hear us? Looks like he left. All right, we're moving on from Robert on to David Flatt.
No new updates at this time.
Thank you, David. Mr. Matt DeFalco.
Thank you, Matthew DeFalco, for the record. I don't have any updates other than just to say thank you to the staff who gave us a briefing last week for taking the time to walk through the issues and answer questions. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Ms. Gina Blackman-Taylor, Community Relations.
Hi, Gina Blackman-Taylor for the record. I had the opportunity to meet with Lola Brooks as she was coming in, so I'll let her give her report. Just talked further about greater communication structure between the Bond Oversight Committee and Board of Trustees and that flow of information, and continuing the ongoing conversations that we've had regarding policy and bylaws. So that is essentially my report for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. Is there any public comment when it comes to these reports of the liaisons? Hearing none. Moving on.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead, Ms. Williams. I'm sorry.
You said you had a conversation regarding bylaws,
Correct.
and can you share that with us?
Sure. We're just going to be, there are aspects of our bylaws that are not completely in alignment with the Board of Trustees policies regarding the way that the committees operate. So we are looking at how to make some language adjustments in order to facilitate better communication and better working with Bond Oversight with Board of Trustees.
Okay, so it sounds like we're going to take another second look at, do another complete revision, and then take a look at those
Correct.
all over. Okay, so pretty much starting the process over.
I wouldn't say starting the process over,
Well,
but
sounds like it's going to be a lot more
we're
robust.
going to be pushing
than-
some of that other
Okay.
conversation.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, thank you. I was wondering why it wasn't on our agenda, so thanks for that explanation.
You're welcome.
All right, now, moving on to 2.03, report by the Clark County Board of Trustees. Ms. Lola Brooks, you are up.
Thank you. I don't have much to say. I'm happy to be here. I was hoping to just observe today, figure out, get a little bit more insight on what the committee's focus is, and I want to discuss moving forward what the expectations the committee has on the board side as far as communication. I did meet with Gina. We talked a little bit about the bylaws. The bylaws that you have now, I appreciate that you guys have done a lot of work. Unfortunately, they're not in alignment with the board adopted. We have a policy specifically stating what board committees should look like. Some of your bylaws just haven't been updated since for a while, and they're not in alignment. I think maybe they predate our policy. So I think I'm looking forward to a robust conversation about how to make sure this is useful and meaningful on both sides. So I appreciate being here today, and I just want to observe, and I'm happy to help.
Thank you, Ms. Brooks. All right, is there any questions or comments, public comment for Ms. Brooks? Oh, go ahead, Yvette. You have a question.
Thank you. I just wanted to address Trustee Brooks. Thank you for being here, and really do appreciate those comments. And it kind of clarifies better for me as to what the intent of the trustees is, to wait on the bylaws, so thank you for that. I'm all about great bylaws and robust bylaws that give good instruction and expectation and goal setting. And so really appreciate your comments too, with the desire of the trustees to be in better communication with us, because I feel like that's a missed opportunity. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for your sentiments.
Thank you. Okay, not hearing any more public comment, we're going to move on to 2.04, 2015 Capital Improvement Program Summary Status. Mr. Rodney Fouts, you are up.
Could we please bring Exhibit 2.04A to the screen, please?
Judging, bingo, bango, bongo.
Go ahead, Rodney.
Committee Chair Lopez, committee members, Rodney Fouts for the record. Our monthly update, revenues to date off of bonding is $3.1 billion. We have expense and encumbered $3.57 billion of those funds. $2.73 billion is expended, and we have encumbrances of another $839 million. Our available cash flow is $387 million, but with our encumbrances, you'll see that we have a $452.5 million deficit. We're not concerned about that because of the timing when we issue our bonds and we actually expend those funds. As stated in the past, when we encumber something, if we have a contract that's $40 million, that full amount gets encumbered. It's reflected in our financial statements that way, but it doesn't mean that we've actually expended that money. That leaves us moving on to Exhibit 2.04B. This is the shortened version of our usual report, which we report every quarter. The only thing to add is that we had a bid award on Roberts Elementary School. Our original budget was $13.3 million. Since then, we have raised that $4.8 million for a total budget of just over $18 million for Roberts Elementary School Comprehensive Modernization Project. And that's the two reports that I have for today. Any questions?
Are there any questions for Mr. Fouts? Go ahead, Matt.
Matthew DeFalco for the record. Thanks, Rodney, for that. Could you just give us a little bit of background on what the increase is in the budget that we're spending extra money on?
Again, I can't give you line items, but every time we get a OPC, which is basically a design element of that project, usually 30%, 60%, 95%, and then bid award, we increase that budget predicated on what the design team has calculated those expenditures to be on construction. We in turn also build a margin in on ourselves for any outside off-site improvements and those types of things, or any unexpected costs. Again, if we get into the details of what makes that up, we would have to go look at each OPC and then determine what the final bid is compared to that.
Follow up, okay, Chair? So generally, am I right to assume, in the past, we've talked about the same kind of things, and it's inflation, higher costs of materials, labor?
Mr. DeFalco, Brandon McLaughlin. Yeah, certainly a future agenda item from the last meeting was construction cost increase as a agenda item in the future. But then, yes, it's generally inflation and some of the other things that are in the CIP revision 6 that are captured in that as well.
Thank you.
Rodney Fouts for the record. In the later presentation, which we provided the briefing on, our construction material cost as reported by Associated Builders from the Producer Price Index shows that construction material costs are up 42.1% from February 2020. That doesn't include any costs associated with labor and so forth, which would also add to those various costs. And again, when we get to the next presentation regarding our CIP revision 6, we will give a little more flavor on that as well.
Matthew DeFalco, thank you very much. I think that's really important information to share.
Go ahead, Abraham.
Abraham Camille for the record. I see that the award has been, the bid has been awarded. Who's the general contractor that won this bid?
we'd have to follow up with that.
Okay. And once again, I'm just echoing this. Maybe you guys will be able to talk about it in the presentation, but at what point do we start saying it's too much to continue remodeling, fixing, rebuilding, and spending public money? I feel that we're gonna run, the piggy bank's gonna run out soon if we are not smart for a rainy day.
Mr. Cameo, Brandon McLaughlin, for the record, that's exactly why Revision 6 was brought forward.
All right, thank you. That's no further questions.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Fouts or the staff from the board? Okay, hearing none. Is there any public comment for the staff? Hearing none. Moving on to 2.05, election of executive committee. I do know that everyone here that's on the executive board does wish to move forward in their current positions. I've confirmed that, so I guess it's time to open it up for nominations for chair. Please, legal, if I'm doing something correctly, please advise, because this is something I'm not really familiar with.
Excuse me, you can have the discussion and then open it for public comment, and then motions follow afterwards.
Okay, so we'll open up for discussion then at this time. Go ahead, Ms. Williams.
Yvette Williams, for the record. I understand that all of the current members express an interest in continuing. I know it's been our trend that typically each of you serve for 2 years in your current position. But I want to ask a question, because I know I've expressed this before in our previous conversations in the bylaws addressing our officers. Do all of our officers have the time necessary to really give in that role as an officer, in the Pacific role that you're in? That's a question I'd like to ask each of you to answer for us. I think our work is very important, especially given what we're faced with these rising costs, and having a visit at looking at suspending the construction of some of our schools. I think we're in a dire strait coming up, and I think that it's important that we know that our officers who are representing us with the district, with facilities, and our trustees and the community, to make sure that each of you have that time to invest in the position that you currently hold and want to continue to serve in. So I'd like to just ask each of you that.
Okay, I'll go first. Been on this board since 2019. Been very committed to it, always shown up, and I will continue to be involved. So I have no problem continuing and have the time to do it as well.
I'll go second. Abraham for the record, Abraham Camille for the record. Since I've been a member of this board, I've been able to attend all the meetings. I also enjoy working together with our team from the school district, and I enjoy working with our community, and I personally enjoy trying to be a liaison, the middle guy for everybody, because at the end of the day, we are one big community, and our school district is such a great thing for our school and our children and everybody in between. So I personally I've committed to serving to the fullest capacity I possibly can.
Thank you for the comment, but this is strictly for the executive board.
Yes.
So,
Sorry about that.
in case anyone has any questions or comments about the executive board, myself, Ms. Gina Blackman, Mr. Chad Conrad, those are the three positions that are open for nominations at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvette, for the question. Yeah, I do believe that I have the time to serve, especially now that I'm no longer PTA president. But you're right, it does something that takes our time. There's a lot of time that is unseen outside of this meeting, and I think it's valuable to be able to give that time.
Chad Conrad, for the record. Yes, I do believe that I have the time to dedicate to perform the duties. I mean, for full disclosure, this isn't my day job. I have a job as a CFO, but this is important to me, and I have children in the school district, and I believe this is an important role, and there's value that I can provide in it. Thank you.
Thank you, each of you, for that. I just think it's important that, one, you're on the record, and two, I think the public wants to know, too, because the Bond Oversight Committee is, I don't know, sometimes we kind of work in a vacuum, and people aren't really aware of really what we do or who we are, and so I think it's important that they hear that you're making that commitment to them, as well as to your colleagues on this committee. So thank you for that. And I've enjoyed working with each of you, just for the record.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Is there anyone else on the board that would have questions or concerns with the 3 positions that are up for nomination? Hearing none, is there any public comment dealing with the 3 nominations that will be up for election here shortly? Hearing none, so then I think we can move forward. Go ahead, I'm sorry. Byron, do you have something to say, Byron? Byron Goins. We can't hear you if you're speaking. You're on mute if you're trying to say something. Byron Goins. One more time, Byron. I think you're on mute from what we're seeing on this side, so just letting you know in case you can't hear us or you're talking and we're not hearing you at this time. No. Did he reach out to you otherwise to try to call? Byron Goins, we did get word that you want to say something, but you're not coming through. We have some technical difficulties hearing you at this point. Give them a few seconds to see if we can get these technical difficulties worked out. One more time, Mr. Byron Goins, can you hear us? Okay. Well, if you...
To 11.
Oh, there
This
you
is
go,
Byron. I can hear.
Go ahead, bud. You have something to say or questions for...
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. Thank you, Byron. Open it up for nominations?
Correct.
Okay, we're going to open up for nominations for chair for the next, to serve for the next year, 12 months. So
I nominate Al Lopez.
we have a nomination of Alfonso Lopez for chair.
Abraham Kamel, for the record, I second that motion.
We have a second on the floor for Mr. Lopez to continue on for the next 12 months as chair.
For clarity, these are just nominations, not motions. We still have to open it up for public comment.
Okay, after the nominations?
Yes.
Okay. So for each position as well?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any public comment out there for myself to continue as chair for the next 12 months? Hearing no public comment at this time. So do we move on to the next position or follow with a vote?
Next position.
Okay. Now the nominations are open for first vice chair. Do we have any nominations for first vice chair?
I'll make a nomination for Gina Blackman-Taylor to continue as first vice chair. Yvette Williams.
Ms. Yvette Williams has nominated Ms. Gina Blackman to continue for the next 12 months as vice chair. Do we have a second?
I second.
Matt
Matthew
DeFalco,
DeFalco.
we have a second from Mr. Matt DeFalco. Do we have any public comment out there for Ms. Gina Blackman to continue for the next 12 months as first vice chair? I completely agree with that comment. Thank you. Okay, so we now need nominations for second vice chair, which is currently held by Mr. Chad Conrad. Do I have nominations for second vice chair?
Dave Lamb, for the record, Chad Conrad as second vice chair.
Nomination.
I have a motion from Mr. Chad Conrad for a second vice chair. Do I have a second?
Yvette Williams, second.
Yvette Williams will second that nomination as well for Mr. Chad Conrad to continue as second vice chair. Do we have any public comment pertaining to the second vice chair of Mr. Chad Conrad? Hearing none. Then now, since there's no public comment, we take the election per position, or is it one full slate?
One full motion.
Okay. I will now put on the floor a motion to continue Mr. Al Lopez as chair, Ms. Gina Blackman as first vice chair, and Mr. Chad Conrad as second vice chair for the next 12 months on the Bond Oversight Committee. Go ahead. Yeah, I made the motion to, I think I can make the motion myself, can I?
Abraham Camejo, for the record, I second that motion for the vote.
It's legal for the chair to elect himself. Right? Okay, just want to make sure because that's a technicality. Okay, we have a first and a second on the floor. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Say nay. Hearing none, motion carries. So we will continue for the next 12 months as is in our current positions. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate the gratitude. Thank you. All right, we are going to move on now to 2.06, damage at Earl B. Lundy Elementary School. We would have Mr. Brandon McLaughlin. The floor is all yours, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Brandon McLaughlin, Assistant Superintendent for the record. The things being presented before you here are a presentation and the assessment report that accompanied the conclusions of it for a community meeting that was held June 7th out at Indian Springs School regarding the damage at Earl B. Lundy Elementary School. Pretty straightforward. I'll go just very high level over a lot of it and then take questions at the end. Obviously, Tropical Storm Hillary did damage Lundy Elementary School, which is leading to a school closure recommendation at a future agenda item for the Board of School Trustees. What are included in this presentation deck is merely some of those damages. So if we go, in fact, to page 7, there's a few high-level images. Obviously, these are immediately following the storm. Back in August of 2023. You then get into page 5, which is a major repair analysis. This is the bulleted list of things that are being reported by our professional engineering and architect partners that conducted the survey or assessment of that campus for items that would need to be repaired or replaced. You then get into page 6, which is the insurance components. That yes, an insurance claim was finalized or submitted, and the district did receive some insurance reimbursement, not for everything. So the items that will be covered in a future board item are going to break that down a lot more distinctly of what is or is not included. If you go to page 7, like I said, there's $1.5 million was awarded as a part of the insurance claim value, minus a $500,000 deductible, and the already close to $250,000 expensed at that site. It means there's a $750,000 remaining to make improvements to that campus. All the while, the improvements are listed at a range of $5.5 to $6.5 million to get that school fully operational once again. You then look to page 9. Obviously, there is a impact on the students and families, which the region superintendent has been very closely coordinating with those families affected. There are 10 current students that are impacted by any recommendation for closure. A few key components to this are the attendance options. So zoning will adjust to Indian Springs Elementary School in the recommendation. There's also a change of school assignment option available to families, which again, the region superintendent has been supporting very well for those families. Transportation has been looked at and has been provided to Indian Springs, as well as some policy and regulation updates that would allow families to go elsewhere on COSA if the opportunity presents itself to them. The district has been engaging in a series of 2 questions predominantly surrounding what meaningful traditions and what artifacts may need to come from Lundy to Indian Springs in a transition such as this, if the board is to, in fact, approve a school closure recommendation. The communications department has been receiving some feedback on what those responses have been to date. So we are trying to meaningfully integrate those as we redesign the Indian Springs School. It is part of the CIP Revision 5 that's being in design right now. You go to page 12, we realized there was impacts on the community. More often than not, we've heard the fire service training component to it, the playground utilized by the community, as well as the school is used for community meetings and events. So we certainly acknowledge that and have been trying to be mindful of how we connect the dots for how those services may continue long-term for that community. You then go to page 14 of what comes next. So the recommendation to close is on the board, a school board of trustees agenda for June 27th. Any citizen requesting reconsideration can do so in writing immediately following that, and then within 30 days, the school board would have to reconsider it, which we anticipate to hold July 11th as a potential meeting for that reconsideration. As far as what comes next on page 15, obviously in September 2023, we installed some temporary measures to shore up the building corner that was predominantly damaged in a lot of the photographs. That was a temporary measure taken. It's by no means it's reoperational once again. So any future decision would need to be worked on with the superintendent's office and at a later date, and then likely due to snowfall and the challenges of working in rural locations like that, 2025 would be the earliest anything appears on the physical campus as far as improvements or demolitions or anything to that nature. So with that, that concludes the agenda item that was, or the presentation deck that was presented on June 7th. The other item is reference material item B, or letter B. This was the full assessment report conducted. Like I said, we hired a team of professional architects and engineers that conducted with their subject matter expertise, looking at what the issues with that facility would be long-term to regain its operational endeavor. So with that, we're not going to go laboriously through 114 pages. We'll open it for questions or additional comment from members of the committee, please.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Brandon on this issue from the committee? Go ahead, Chad.
Thank you. Thank you for the quick presentation. Just to clarify for me, I understand the shortfall between, I guess, the $1.5 million insurance claim value and the dollar amount remaining for site repair, but why, if you can maybe help me understand, why the value of the insurance claim was only $1.5 million if there was $6.5 million worth of repairs?
Jason Gaddy for the record. So there's approximately $5.5 to $6.5 million of estimated damage from a compilation of a few different reports, one being the report in front of you, which is a total of just around $4.5 million. There's also right around $800,000 of internal costs related to low voltage. And then additionally, some other items that were identified through the insurance component of it related to things such as repairing the drain with large rock and things of that nature. Again, so the total overall estimate is somewhere around between $5.5 and $6.5 million at this time with known costs. The insurance claim is as is right now. There's a $1.5 million value to repair or to provide insurance coverage for that. The main difference is that as the insurance company has gone through and identified the specific costs included in the $4.5 million, there's approximately $3.5 million of which are excluded costs such as soil damage and other components of it. That then essentially sets us at a $3.5 million starting number for what we would be required to pay out of pocket. Additionally, as we mentioned, there's a $500,000 component of deductible, and we've already spent $250,000 to essentially emergency restore it so it didn't further damage the building itself. There would be additional insurance proceeds available to us if we proceeded with additional repairs. However, we don't know how much more repairs we would identify through that process, And so that's why we're talking about, we know that we would have to spend at least $3.5 million, and we believe there's a potential for another $1.5 to $2 million that would not be covered through insurance if we move forward with the repairs.
Thank you. Appreciate that answer. That makes sense. Then one more follow-up question, if I can.
Go ahead, Chad.
Of the, and I'm not looking for specific details, but of the $5.5 to $6.5 million repair cost, do you consider that to be bond funds that would be needed to repair, to make those repairs, or would those be classified as some other operating or cash fund from a sources standpoint?
Rodney Fouts for the record. I think ultimately we determine on what the total price is going to be and what direction we would like to take the school district. Currently, the items that would be available to us is Fund 315, which are the bond funds. However, we don't have a project approved for that as today. And then the other option would potentially be Fund 340, which is government service taxes funds. However, we tried to keep that to particular projects that are related into a shorter lifespan. Obviously, building or a new school would be well beyond a 5-year lifespan that we typically try to keep those projects under.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the board?
Gina Blackman Taylor for the record. Actually, it's a question related to Chad, and you may have mentioned it, but with the temporary work that was done already, that was obviously did not use bond funds, it used maintenance funds from facilities or emergency funds, or where did that funding come from?
Rodney Fouts for the record. I believe currently just the repair costs we were doing to shore up the building and so forth did come from 340 with the option of moving those funds to whatever ultimately pays for the project.
And that includes all of the assessment. Gina Blackman Taylor for the record. That includes all the assessments that were done in addition to the actual work that was done.
Rodney Fouts, it would be any cost that we've incurred to date. So if the assessments were done, yes, it would include those.
Okay. And then I had a question about the FCI number. Has there been an update to that facility conditioning index number post the storm, or was that assessment done?
Members of the committee, Brandon McLaughlin for the record. The last time that school was assessed, because as we work through, we go through 1/5 of our inventory, and that school was actually last conducted their FCI right before that 5-year window. So their 5-year would have been this year. So it would have been inaccurate to capture the current state of it. So.
You good?
Thank you.
Go ahead, Ms. Williams.
Okay, bear with me, I have a few questions. One, Mr. Gowdy, you mentioned, and I want to just make sure it's clear also for the record, but also for my understanding, you mentioned as low as $3.5 million for the repairs, and that out of what we receive from insurance, I'm not sure what the net is left that we would have to cover after insurance basically get to the chase. I know it says remaining for site repair, $750,000, but it sounded like you were saying something different. I just want to be clear, based on what we believe it's going to cost at a minimum of $3.5 million up to $6.5 million. What would that be that we're?
So Jason Getty for the record. So our remaining amount after insurance proceeds is $750,000 right now.
Okay.
So we have that. The total cost to repair as of right now, without getting into the buildings themselves and seeing what else might be damaged, is ranging, because we've got ranges of about a total of $5.5 to $6.5 total $1 million.
Okay.
As I mentioned, the insurance company has provided us information on the $4.5 million component of that range. And of that, they've noted that approximately $3.5 million is excluded from the policy as it relates to a number of different components.
Okay.
There are also additional components that we understand that are outside of insurance. We know, such as any pollution remediation, any work on the drain or the storm drain itself, and adding those pieces, those are outside of it, soil, all outside of it. And so that's why we have the additional potential costs of $3.5 up to maybe $5.5 or so million. And again, I liken this to, I try and use this analogy because I think it helps. if you get in a car accident and you take your car into the shop, they may say it's gonna cost $2,000 to repair, and it's gonna be done in 10 days. Virtually every time they get into it, they figure out, once you go into it, you identify other pieces, because you can't do all the full assessment from the outside. They come back and they say it's actually going to be $4,000. It's going to be done in 3 months or 4 weeks or whatever it is. We don't know the actual cost of everything until we get in there, and we know that there's going to be some unanticipated costs. Additionally, with the area, there's a premium for cost to provide construction up at that area, which is not necessarily covered by insurance as well. So I hope that addresses your question.
It does, thank you. I still have some questions. You get your finger off of there. I told you I had a few questions, so bear with me, because this is concerning my only opportunity to ask questions. How many students are currently, I think I heard 10 students enrolled.
So Jason Getty, for the record, there are 10 students that were enrolled for this current year.
Okay, and what is the capacity of the school?
Mr. Chair, members of commission, Ms. Williams, Lundy Elementary School has a capacity of 48 students.
48, okay. Do we know how many students are homeschooled or attend alternative schools that chose not to attend? I'm just trying to understand, if the school was rebuilt, how many students may occupy this building? Potentially.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, Ms. Williams, so from 2022-23 school year, we saw one student that was communicated to us that attended a virtual online school.
Okay.
But we have no records.
Don't know
We
if
would
they're
have no
homeschooled.
records.
Okay. Okay.
So just a correction, just an update of the number of students. 2 of the 10 students that were previously enrolled were in 5th grade and will roll into 6th grade, into middle school.
Okay.
6 students of the remaining 9 that reside in Mount Charleston are all currently going into 3rd grade. So in 2 years, when that very large cohort group would roll out of 3rd grade they would move into middle school, that's a very large cohort. We've heard of one kindergarten student that is planning to enroll, but as of yesterday, I have not seen that student's registration submitted yet.
Okay.
So that would leave a very low number of students.
And then as far as transportation, I understand this is quite a distance, at least that's what I've heard out there. How long does it take for the students to travel from Lundy to from Mount Charleston to Indian Springs?
So Jason Getty for the record. So I've got some data from Transportation Group. Indian Springs is routed with a transit time of 70 minutes in both the morning and the afternoon.
Each way?
Yes.
Okay. And I also heard that Indian Springs is a 1-star and Lundy is a 5-star. Is that correct?
I would have to get back to you on that. I do not have that information in front of me. Thank you.
My question was going to be, what is the plan for CCSD is around how those students will be supported at Indian Springs if there's such that wide span, because of course their proficiency rates and all of that, their level of learning is different. So, we would want to make sure that they're accommodated. And then in of course, this is important to me, culture and climate. So can you speak a little bit more when you talk about transitioning meaningful traditions and artifacts from Lundy to Indian Springs? What does that look like?
Jason Getty for the record. So it was really looking at inquiring of the community as well as the parents of the students to understand if there are any traditions that they do, or are there any specific artifacts that are at the school that mean something that we could transition. So it's a fairly open question, more looking for feedback. We also understand, the name of the school is very important. And as part of board regulation, the name Earl B. Lundy School does take priority in renaming, in future renaming potentials as well. And I know some of the things that were mentioned at the community event, there could be something as simple as maybe naming the gym after Earl B. Lundy and have the Earl B. Lundy. No decisions, just input we're seeking.
And my last question is has a cost analysis been done if you were to just completely, basically tear down and maybe build somewhere else, a small school that fits that community better?
Yeah, Brandon McLaughlin for the record. A study was conducted of that nature. So the building is approximately over 10,000 square feet. That sort of square footage escalated a few years out of what it would take to get there. It puts us over $8 million, probably closer to $9 million.
Even going like half the size? Because what looks like we're talking about 10 students at the most?
Right. The challenge with rural schools like that is you have to offer the right amenities. You can't just have four walls and a roof. You have to have a lot of other support services. So as much as we want to say, yes, let's half the 10,000 square foot they currently have, there would still be kitchens, there would still be gym spaces, there would still be offices that are supporting those two 900 square foot classrooms potentially. So it wouldn't be as easy as halving the building.
Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead, Abraham.
Abraham Camille for the record. To address the kids that would be attending Lundy Elementary School, I asked this question: if the school was open today, how many students would attend? So I actually have real numbers. I have 7 children under the age of 2 that live at the mountain. I have 9 children that are in pre-K. Lundy Elementary School should be offering pre-K as well. I have 10 students at Lundy. I have 7 that are homeschooled. Potentially, I have anywhere between 26 to almost 30 elementary schools that should be attending Lundy Elementary School if it was open. These are numbers that I found out by simply talking to the community. Something the school district has not done. I truly say that with a heart. I say that as a father. I also drove my kids to Indian Springs in my truck, driving at 55 miles an hour. Because I am a safety guy, I do know how fast buses need to drive. So let's talk about the weather. My children were complaining on how long it took me to drive from Indian Springs back to Lundy Elementary School. Let's talk about some cost, because we're talking about this. The utilities cost for the school, utilities and trash, is estimated at $28,867. This information is available from the school district itself. Lundy carryover money is $417,732. Other funds is $27,372. A total of $995,314 to be exact. Lundy's cost per pupil with carryover money is $76,563. The carryover money per pupil minus all this is $41,256. Seems to me that Lundy can pay for its own repairs to remain open. I won't get into more of the financials, but seems to me it's cheaper to keep the school open than bus these kids to Indian Springs on a daily basis, keeping the kids away from harm's way during wintry weather. The Clark County itself doesn't employ the plows to clear up the road until 8 a.m. in the mornings because they got to wait for daybreak. That's a safety thing. So these kids will continue to be late to school going to Indian Springs. And once again, we're taking these students from a 5-star school, which is on the school district's website, 5-star school, to a 1-star elementary school at Indian Springs. I also walked around the building. So we had repairs done and we had the cement installed. Why did we even do that CLMS instead of pouring regular cement? That type of cement can only hold about 3,000 square pounds per square inch. Yes, we're not going to be building a structure on that, so technically it is used to maintain the foundation. So foundation also didn't shift by me walking around. And we've had over a year to go look at this school, but yet, Mr. I'm sorry, I'm going to pronounce your last name wrong, Goody, you guys haven't even been in the building yet to do this. The last time the score was a 52. So yes, we're coming up on the 5-year mark, but I'm looking at this report of 113 pages. I did read it. I looked at it. The generator, it's intact, the foundation of it just needs a cleaning. The electrical, the power is on at the school. The lights are on. The Las Vegas Water Authority said that there's water in that community. There's water to it. You know, I don't know if it's into the building. We haven't, yet, you guys haven't been inside of it. So have we done a safety report? If water did go inside of it and let's say flooded the carpets, did the school district allow that flood to not be clean, not be properly disinfected, and now created mold? Black mold in that area? I'm talking safety now. I go back to the things inside that classroom. Those items in the classroom are still there. School district dropped the ball on this. Also, what is the emergency flood plan for the school district? We had a declared state of emergency from the state of Nevada. And you guys, the school district is pretty much self-insured, correct me if I'm wrong. You guys are considered your own entity. So you guys set your car insurance premium, in other words, for this building, too high for a repair. I question not only Lundy, but every other school in case we have a flood during our summer season. A regular flood from a gymnasium that happens at all our high schools. Why aren't we properly insured for this? Why didn't we reach out to FEMA and ask them to give us a price match? Because we didn't meet the threshold? Why didn't the school district push for this? Why didn't we demand this? Why didn't we ask for our partners from Clark County and from the commissioners to say, hey, help us match dollar for dollar? But no. School district is trying to close this school down again. I go back to 2008. Why are we trying to close down this school? I believe these students deserve a place to learn, not to get bussed around. And later in your presentation, the St. Jude School is going to be, you guys are proposing $5 million bill for that school for 60 students. So let's fix Lundy Elementary for $2.5 million. There's your money. I'll be honest, with everything I keep looking at and finding out, the school district, we dropped the ball, and we should not drop the ball. We are a community. We should be working together. We should be working with our trustees. They represent the students. We should be working with the county commissioners. We should have asked, we should have demanded help, because this not just only affected this little school, it's affecting our children. Funds came out from the Department of Transportation to fix the roads. NV Energy went out there and fixed the power poles. We fixed the parking lot. Damage is not there. Correct me if I'm wrong, but let's go inside that building. Let's take a look. Let's work together. When was the last time that risk management from your guys' department actually went in there and did a real assessment, a safety report? I do safety reports on a daily basis at construction sites. The foundation and all these pictures that you guys are providing, these are old. The roof, the Bond Oversight Committee approved and there's construction, and the roof has been replaced the last 2 years. So the roof is not completely damaged. You can see it from the side of the road. You look at the weather pattern when the floods came down, the water went around the school. We were blessed that the water went around. It didn't go inside, didn't knock down walls. You guys are worried about a room that's for ceramics. All right, let's cut that one out of the chase. We got a storage room. Okay, we don't need a storage room. We can put a container, all-weather container. The paint's still there. The paper that's attached to this building that's been there since it closed, it's still there. It has no water damage. Parking lot, you can park my truck on top of that parking lot and it's fine. Those 2 classrooms should be open. The cost for the leach field and for all these things, this can be done. We can call on our community. We can do a community service project. What this school really needs is a cleanup with a mop and a bucket, and these kids deserve a classroom close to them so they can learn, continue to be a 5-star school. When they get older, they can go and enjoy a brand new high school at Indian Springs. That's me.
Thank you, Abram. I appreciate your passion for this issue. Is there anybody else on the committee that would like to speak on this issue? Go ahead, Mr. Mount DeFalco.
I've got a couple questions. Matthew DeFalco for the record. First of all, I thought I heard a concern about community outreach. Was this presentation given to members of the community at Lundy.
Jason Getty for the record. We had a separate meeting, which they were invited to, and there was a separate meeting held at Mount Charleston the same time we were hosting the one at Indian Springs.
So there was an opportunity for the public to learn just like we are now.
Correct.
On page 15 of the presentation, reference 2.06A, it says, to be determined a decision for future use or transition of the property. Do we have any ideas on what are possibilities if this school were to close down in the future use?
Jason Getty for the record. So why it's TBD one is the board still has to determine whether we close it or not. So that has yet to be determined. So that's the first driver. The second is, as we mentioned, we have reached out to the community to have discussions around potential use of that property in the future if it is closed. Additionally, we have had meetings with different county commissioners who've expressed an interest in discussing what potential there may be in the future as well.
And just to follow up on that, Matthew DeFalco, so we're not ready or in a position to have conversations in public about what people are wanting there yet?
We've sought them, and they're going through our government relations group. I don't know which specific responses they've gotten at this point. I just don't have that. I know that they're reaching out to the community and obtaining those, and so we may have some more information. I know we plan on presenting this to the board next week, and the government relations team is working with public to try and get those to see if there is anything we can present at that point.
Thank you very much.
Do we have, go ahead, Mr. Flatt.
Dave Flatt for the record. You mentioned that it was 70 minutes from they going down the hill. Is that in every stop? Is that 70 minutes total by the crow flies? How did you come up with the 70 minutes, please?
So the 70 minutes is provided by our transportation team, and it is routed with a transit time of 70 minutes. Obviously, weather and different things can object that, but in normal conditions, that is the standard time frame.
And that's with the stop at each one of the stops for
That's
the kids?
the required, yes. So that's the routed from the beginning to the end. And so there may be obviously shorter components to it if you're towards the end. And so just to give some kind of context around that, Magnet elementary schools are routed with approximate transit time in town of approximately 60 minutes. The longest elementary school Magnet run time is 70 minutes. And then neighborhood elementary schools are routed with an approximate transit time of around 45 minutes. And in some cases, even in town can be routed up to 60 minutes. So those are just some context for you.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other questions from the board pertaining to 2.06?
I do.
Go ahead, Abraham.
What's the cost of transporting our children?
So Jason Getty for the record, the incremental cost of transporting the students is nothing. We are already running buses up, 2 buses up to the mountain to bring the middle and high school students down to the elementary school.
So we're exposing elementary kids to high school and middle school language and bad stuff, right?
Jason Getty for the record, these would be the same family members of the students potentially. Some are family members, some are not.
Thank you. I had a quick estimate from a school here in Vegas that the school bus cost $60,000 in fiscal year '23. It tried to charge us this school $180,000 for transportation, about 13 special education students. When the school wanted to extend the school day by 19 minutes, that number would have been exceeded to $70,000 per bus upcoming school year if it was offered. This is a more than estimated utility and trash and the other costs from Lundy. So not to get into the numbers of transportation, but I continue to say that, yes, we have these kids going to the high school level, but we can save money by just keeping the kids at the school down the street from their families. Wouldn't that be the easiest thing to do, keep little kids there?
I'm sorry, is that a question?
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that.
Do you have kids?
I do.
I have kids too. I would like to keep them closer to my home, not on the bus.
Okay.
Matthew DeFalco for the record. I think one of the best things that we do as a school district is our finances, Jason. I think we're really extremely lucky to have you in the position you've been in. That's what I've heard when I had conversations with people. I used to work in the state treasurer's office and told them I was coming on this committee. That's all they've said is that finances, bonds, this is something that the school district does best at. It's the best thing we do. And so from that perspective, as the expert, how important is it at this moment, at a time of rising costs, inflation, construction costs, material costs, labor costs, for the school district to have an opportunity to save money?
Jason Gotti for the record. I mean, you're right, and I believe one of the members earlier made that comment that we have to be very cautious about what we're doing going forward. Inflation rates have been out of control nationwide, and construction here, as Mr. Fouts mentioned, we're up just materials alone 43%. We've seen schools go from costing $29 to $30 million to $50 million. As we've mentioned, we are going to have significant changes necessary with CIP 6 and CIP 7. Is, CIP 6 is kind of a shortened version because of the increase in costs and making sure that we do evaluate every dollar that we spend and try and ensure that we can get the most out of it. So it's paramount at this point. From a capital perspective, we talk about a $12 to $13 billion need, and we have bonding capacity of just over $7 billion. We will never, in this district, not have the need of continuing to bond to ensure that we can keep schools open, refurbish, remodel, rebuild, et cetera. And if you think about that piece, I mean, it's a huge chunk of change. Luckily, we were able to get our bonds, the bonding capacity pushed through to 2035, which is huge. But that means we have to start thinking about how we get that moved forward as early as 2030. Again, so that we don't run into the position that we've been in the past where we don't have bonding capacity, because there's no way that we could continue to survive without that. And as I mentioned, and you mentioned, we're trying to look at every dollar to make sure that we do everything we can with it. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Go ahead, Abraham.
Going off of that question, so if Lundy Elementary School is closed, will we start seeing closures to other elementary schools and other properties that have low enrollment numbers? I have a whole list of schools that have less than 200 students there. Good Springs has, 3 students over there? Are we going to close that school down just to save a buck? Are we going to, I mean, this is a real question. Will this have a domino effect to other schools on the east side of Las Vegas, North Las Vegas, and my community? Because I know we're not closing no schools in Summerlin or in Green Valley or in Henderson. So when these schools start closing, I really wonder, is it going to affect our low-income families that can't afford to go anywhere else? We're trying to save money, so is the school district eventually going to close down because enrollments are down, as we've seen in our reports, because the charter schools are taking our students? I mean, if we're talking money and closures, I mean, I personally feel that there's a domino effect, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Jason Getty for the record. This is a singular decision based off singular facts. Enrollment will always be a discussion that this group looks at when we talk about the need to build new schools and the additional need on where schools are ultimately needed. So I don't see this as any domino effect. This is not going to change the fact that we've closed this, or we propose to close this school and look at other schools to change. You brought up Good Springs, right? So there's 2 or 3 students there. When they roll out, and if there's no students there, then that may be a different decision point. Additionally, as we start looking at CIP 7 or whatever it is, enrollment will continue to be a discussion, and it should be a discussion about this group, about where we invest dollars and how we invest them. Lowering enrollment, we're essentially flat. We're down 1, maybe 2%. Highest that I've been here is somewhere around 327,000 students. We're down in the low 290s. We're still an overcrowded district. So I've always said, and I continue to say this in public, that is not hurting us. It's not like we're in one of the school districts in the Midwest that are very small, and as they lose a huge chunk, they got to close down 20% of their schools. We are going to continue to evaluate the need for schools and where they're most needed, and not shut them down just because they're in a different neighborhood, but because if that's a consideration that, one, this group will have input on, AZAC will have input on, and then ultimately we'll go to the board for decisions, we'll continue to monitor that because it's always very important.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question. So with that being said and the decision-making, should we, as a board, wait for the changes that the Board of Trustees for elections to be completed? Should we wait for the decision for our new superintendent to get hired, or with our current superintendent to continue in her role? Should this be something that maybe we should pause not only on this school, but on every school? Because there's a lot of changes, a lot of wheels are moving within our district, the Clark County School District. And so should we wait for those people that get elected to make those recommendations to be able to make that final decision?
Jason Gutty, for the record, that question is certainly out of my purview to answer.
And I would just caution the board to stick to the agenda topic.
Crystal, this
Am I
is the
okay,
agenda
Chair?
topic. I'm sorry.
I'm okay, Chair?
Go ahead, Ms. Williams.
Okay. Yvette Williams. I no disrespect to anyone, and I know people are here to talk about this issue, but I think we're starting to jump into CIP 6. When we start talking about other schools and closing all that, and I think that's another whole issue we got to deal with. Delaying those schools, have needs too, so I would much rather us move this issue forward with Lundy and then deal with all these other schools in our next agenda item. Thank you.
Are you done, Abram? Okay. Are there any other questions from the board? Even Rob or Byron, virtually, do you guys have any questions for the staff pertaining to 2.06 at this time?
Rob Verdeson, no questions at this time. Thank you.
Byron, you good? I think Byron's good. All right. I will, before I open up for public comment on 2.06, I need to read off a regulation that pertains here. It's on file here. It's 2.06C. It's the Clark County School District regulation of R-7113. And it as follows: closing schools. Only the Board of School Trustees is authorized to close or change the function of a Clark County School District school. A, prior to making a recommendation to close or change the function of a school, the district will initiate studies to explore: 1, expand or specialized education programs; 2, district attendance zoning changes; 3, other strategies to permit ongoing programs to the extent they are educationally and feasibly sound. B, upon receipt of the recommendation to close or change the function of a school, the superintendent will initiate action in accordance with Nevada statutes as follows: 1, provide 30 days written notice to the principal, teachers, and parents of attending children of the affected school. 2, public notice of the subject time and place of the board meeting at which the recommendation will be considered. Publication will be in a newspaper or general circulation in Clark County at least 10 days prior to the meeting. 2, Section 2, a Clark County resident who is aggrieved by a board decision to close or change the function of a school may request in writing within 30 days a board hearing for reconsideration of that decision. A, the board hearing will be scheduled within 30 days and receipt of the request. Notice of the time and place of this hearing will be published in a newspaper of general circulation in Clark County at least 10 days prior to that hearing. The decision of the board after its reconsideration hearing is a final decision subject to judicial review as provided by law. Thank you. So now that that's been put on the record, I will now open this up for public comment for 2.06. I have Ms. Chris Jean Culiani first up. And just letting you know, Chris, that there's a timer on this thing. I'm going to put
Timed it
you
at
on.
home again, so I'm not saying my name so you don't punish me for it.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Prior to making a recommendation to close or change a function of a school, you just read into the record, and that was the first line of my my notes, none of those studies have been done, not 1, 2, or 3. Nor have you had a community meeting on the mountain as requested by our neighbors. 60 people showed up to ours. Only 5 people showed up to the Indian Springs, and they were all from Indian Springs. Parents and teachers were notified 30 days prior to closure. However, CCSD chose to wait to notify on May 10th, just before summer vacation. Yet they knew prior to January 18th they intended to close Lundy, therefore they didn't meet the 30-day timeline. In their school projections for 24-25, they zeroed out the students. They have never bothered to offer or do a head count of the pre-K students, which are 9, nor those that are chose homeschooling versus a 3-hour bus ride. They just stopped communicating with those parents who had to deal with a special circumstance, a flood. Further, CCSD rezoned students further away and didn't bother to at least send the students to Bilbray or Scheckenbacher for the 23-24 school year. CCSD also never brought the zone change to AZAC nor to the parents. Why is Lundy no longer listed as a school, even a school in CCSD on the 24-25 school precinct funding report? An assessment was set up by Ethos 3. They contracted with Wood Rogers and Wright Engineers. They issued their report, this one that's here today, which has never been given to you until today. They were paid $124,500. Ethos did an on-site walk-around, as did Wright on page 51. Wright Engineers state, my observations were limited to the southeast portion of the building where the damage occurred. The southeast portion was the kiln and storage. It's not part of the school. Page 53 of the assessment document, also from Wright Engineers, said, in our professional opinion, the main structure may be occupied when the temporary measure of supporting the storage room is complete. That was completed by Martin Harris in December for a tune of $120,684.27. Part of the report talks about a kiln room. That was never even part of the building. It's not been used in 7 years. The storage room is not necessary to the building. This report that I had to request through a FOIA, where they illegally redacted information, which is also redacted in yours as well, was not shared with this Bond Oversight Committee nor the Board of Trustees. They've had it since September 15th of last year. Why wasn't it a public hearing? None of the trustees or bond members have been able to go to the building. You've been denied, at least I know at least one of you asked. The report also says the septic system may need to be repaired, but you redacted the map of its location. SNHD and NDEP can't even find your permit. The police and firefighters have used this facility all year long until you canceled their lease after May 10th. Why was it safe for them but not the students? Why haven't we seen a written damage and cost report? Why have we not been able to discuss these options like adults? Why can't we do a walkthrough with the engineers? Why is CCSD citing it's too costly an excuse to not provide an equitable education to a rural school? Why have you bothered to physically get a count of the students? What's next? Good Springs, Reed, Blue Diamond. Rural schools should be protected, not abandoned. Thank you. Oh, and I have a handout.
Thank you, Chris.
Whoever that.
Okay, we'd also have Miss Brenda Talley. Is she in the room?
And before I get to the mic and my time starts, I would like to, Ms. Williams had asked the question about the five-star school. I do have that information on both Indian Springs and also the SDI score for February 2023 was 56, and I have that as well. Be interested.
Okay, go ahead. The floor is all yours.
In August, a team of professional engineers were assembled to assess the damage to our school. Their report indicates the repairs needed to reopen. I won't go over all the ones that Chris did. The district's list of repairs aren't consistent with the reports, and still we have not received any documentation for the cost of repairs from the district. From the damage report, this is what we see needs to be repaired and what doesn't. The propane tanks, they need to be relocated. One HVAC unit replaced. The kiln room does not need to be replaced because the kiln is gone and hadn't been used for years. Replace the parking lot. Parking lot has just been filled. It's been filled, just needs paving. Second floor weight room, presentation of the steel beams shown in their presentation. The crack, they indicated replacement of roof support beams. However, the report photo clearly shows the back securely attached, and it states it is intact and no movement shown. It's pre-existing condition and condition acceptable, no repairs needed there. Again, the weight room, there was 2 wood beams had a crack. Report states appears pre-existing, and engineer states in the professional opinion, no repairs needed for any of these items in the weight room. Water remediation and repair, the report photos show main entry with some minor water mud damage, replace carpeting. Your presentation states replace flooring for water damage throughout. Yet photos in the report of the cracks and flooring show no water damage, and the photos we took through the windows show no water damage at all, maybe replace the flooring later. And she talked about stabilizing the southeast corner, and they said that building could be occupied when that was done, and elevations were checked twice and no settling found. And per the engineers, the building can be occupied. The septic system needs to be replaced. Report recommends when water power are restored, temporary toilet facilities are an option until the system is completed. I confirmed Water District has restored water to the building. The drainage realignment, we don't believe that should be the district's total responsibility. There may be funding available to assist here. We have support from our federal and state legislators. Our governor, the county commissioners have asked the district to work with them to see what they could help with there. The district's first responsibility is to provide our kids, all kids, an education with equality and equity, not one in which studies show impacts to the children, not only academically, but health-wise, with the bus ride, and it's almost 3.5 hours with the stop. I have followed the bus one day, round trip, and the early pickup time of 6 o'clock in the morning. These kids are getting up at 5 o'clock. When we talked to them at our meeting, they said they're falling asleep in the class, not just on the bus. Retract the recommendation for closure, get the actual cost, and let's get this school repaired and opened instead of balancing the budget on the backs of these young kids. Wow, that was kind of really good, huh?
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. We now have McLovia Camacho? Oh, okay. All right, thank you. Isaac Armas. Oh, so that, okay. Okay, so I assume Anthony Armas is not here either. Anthony Armas? Okay. There's also Miss Jenna Evans here to speak on this issue? No? Okay. All right. Is there anyone else here that wishes to speak in public comment when it pertains? Go ahead, sir, step up. We'll give you 3 minutes, so you're on the clock, bud.
Hello, my name's Ed Courtney. I'm son of Francis H. Courtney of Francis H. Courtney Middle School. I've lived here since 1964. When growing up, we had a cabin in Mount Charleston from 1979 on. I own the lot across from Lundy Elementary School. I think it'd be a travesty to close this school. I grew up knowing kids that went to this school. It was a huge benefit to have this school in their community. When we talk about school, I think we have to talk about the school as a educational institution, but also as a fabric of the community. And I think if you look at this school, it is part of the community. It is a fabric of that community in Mount Charleston, in Old Town, and it has been for decades. I think if you close this school, like I said, you'd be doing an injustice. Part of the problem with making these kids travel 70 minutes on a bus, you know, these kids are still suffering from the effects of the COVID shutdowns and all of that. If you close this, you're only making it harder for these elementary school kids to get a good education, to get a good night's sleep, get up, have a good breakfast, get to school, and have a good education. I think what we're talking about is a drop in the bucket compared to the size and scope of the Clark County School District. I mean, I just think, again, you'd be doing a disservice to the community. And I also have to question, I heard in the back about $5.5 to $6.5 million, but we haven't entered the building yet. So I don't even know how you can arrive at that figure if you haven't even entered the building yet. It seems absurd to me. I've been in construction for 40 years, and I've heard all these numbers tossed around about 11 million and 8 million. And I've looked at the school and I'm going, I don't know where they're getting these numbers from or who they're hiring to do this, but that's insane. If it costs that much, then it's not inflation, it's mismanagement. It's you're just not hiring the right people. But that's all I have. I just implore you to really explore this issue. I think it's extremely important for the kids. I think they deserve to have an elementary school in their community, just like everyone else in this community. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sir, could you please, sir, would you apply, there's a sign-in sheet there you could put, so you put on the record that you did attend and you said something on the record. Is there anyone else here in the audience that would like to speak on 2.06? Hearing none, so we are going to move on now forward to 2.07. This is the 2015 Capital Improvement Program, revision number 6. Mr. Brandon McLaughlin, you're up.
Good afternoon now, Mr. Chair. Brandon McLaughlin for the record. Revision 6 is being brought forward, obviously for a few, sorry, if we can step back, if you can pull up just in reference 2.07, please. So certainly it's been a predominant theme throughout the last several months that construction costs are rising. We definitely wanted to start to react to that sooner rather than later. So revision 6 is being brought forward with a few pretenses that we know are going on in the marketplace that make a lot of sense. So page 2, please. Revision 6 is being brought forward due to certainly the economic realities since revision 5 was brought forward, which is would have been November 2021, December 2021 for the trustees. So acknowledging some of those, as well as the marketplace saturation that's ongoing, as well as Mr. Baldwin's fantastic presentation in April surrounding our district enrollment trends. Next page, please. Certainly economic realities is just one input to it that Mr. Fouts will cover.
Rodney Fouts for the record. As stated earlier, production prices and material costs have gone up 42.1% since February of 2020. Those vary through various types of categories, which can be seen on this particular slide. I like to use the analogy of what we built an elementary school for back in 2019 and 2020. We were building those schools at $31.5 million to $32 million. They're currently going to cost us $49 to $50 million. So part of that is obviously the building material cost, and this leads into the next slide, slide 4, which will show a reasoning why we want to flatten these construction projects out due to material costs. Construction labor cost.
Yeah, next slide, please. So the other component to this is marketplace saturation. The chart in front of you is the amount of construction dollars entering the marketplace per month from CCSD projects alone. The red line indicates where we are currently at in that projection. Certainly, we're not even to the apex of tail end of 2024, where we're going to experience additional construction dollars entering the marketplace. And at the state we're at, we're already receiving 1, sometimes 2 bidders on large projects, which is not making for competitive pricing. So certainly we want to acknowledge that in a goal or aspirational goal of a revision should be to level this out, and in predominance we're going to have to endure what's coming tail end of this year, and I think we've got management in place to try to correct some of those through proper advertising of our projects, trying to gain more contractors to be doing our work to try to control that a little bit. Once you hit into 2026, 2027, which will be the next apex of this, certainly a goal would be to level some of that out to 28 and 29 just by means of trying to control a more predictable workforce necessary to complete CCSD projects, which in turn could create a more competitive bidding climate for us. And the last piece will be on the next slide is our enrollment trends.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, just a couple snapshots from the presentation I provided you in April. The top graph, the bar charts represents the number of children born in Clark County, and then the line bisecting that is the number of children 5 years later once they're eligible for kindergarten. The peak year there, over 30,000 children born in Clark County, was the 2007-2008 school year. And if you all may remember, that is the start of the Great Recession period. After that, enrollments continue to decline. I'll point out that birth year, that cohort group is currently for the 2024-25 school year will be the senior class, the 12th grade class. And so that very large cohort group will be graduating this year. Will be CCSD's largest graduating class to record. By looking at that elementary kindergarten enrollment line, kindergarten enrollments continue to decline, specifically with the pandemic year over on the right-hand side, and then the two, we did see an uptick after the pandemic year, and then a significant downturn in kindergarten enrollments the following 2 years, largely due to some changes in state law and kindergarten eligibility. Our projections for the next 5 years, specifically the next 3 years, we're expecting to lose 5,000 students in total enrollment over the next 3 years. Once again, that's largely due to those very high graduating classes and then being replaced by very small incoming kindergarten classes. Over on the right-hand side of this column are the elementary on the top in the red, projections for 5 years. The middle school is in the green in the middle there, and the high school projections on the bottom there in blue.
Next slide, please. So you've got 3 decision points within this revision 6. Very much, we'll go through each of these a lot more detailed, but we'll just read them off here. Site of elementary school, location 1 of 10. So if you guys can recall from revision 5 to the capital improvement plan, there was 10 brand new elementary schools included in that. At the time, we just knew there was population growth happening at that time, but not necessarily where we needed schools per se. So there was 10 included, and we're just recommending the first of those 10 be sited in an area with increased students moving into those areas. Item number 2 is for an Innovation Academy High School in the southwest portion of the valley, which we'll have more for in a later slide. And last but not least, all projects scheduled to open school year 27-28 and the subsequent years thereafter be delayed. They're opening 1 year, with the exception of Matt Kelly Elementary School. So we'll go to the next slide.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, so while we are seeing decreasing enrollments throughout the district, that's not necessarily true for all parts of the valley. Divich Elementary School opened in 2008. This is in the far northwest part of the valley. Generally, this is the Sky Canyon Master Plan community. There's substantial growth at Divich Elementary School, as well as several of the surrounding elementary schools. Divich this year alone saw a 9% increase in enrollment for the 2023-24 school year, with an enrollment over 1,100 students enrolled at that school, and we're still projecting that continued growth to happen. So and new residential developments coming in, it's expected to yield significant number of students in that area. So we are recommending the siting of this first new elementary school as decision point number 1.
Great, so that's decision number 1. Next slide, please. The next one is for an Innovation Academy High School in the southwest portion of the valley. So if you recall, revision 3, 4, and 5 have all had a high school in this proposed location. I think that clearly demonstrates there is a high school need. If you look at Desert Oasis and Sierra Vista High Schools alone, they're at 123 and 125%. The problem that we observed as staff was there was a 2,700 seat high school plan for this. Those are 40-acre, full tilt, comprehensive high schools with all the fields and all the amenities. If we built a school like that, though Desert Oasis and Sierra Vista are overcrowded, it would sit half vacant for the foreseeable future. So to the point of an earlier comment, it certainly wouldn't be maybe the most prudent of our resources. And then by doing that, we would then also see Desert Oasis and Sierra Vista also sitting potentially half vacant, because it would flood the high school available capacity in the area. So we are proposing to bring this down to a more reasonable number of 1,500 seats. This is in line with some of our career and technical size campuses. It seems to be a sweet spot of offering an intimate educational experience, as well as being able to be efficient with attracting the right amount of students for that area. The programming aspect of it, Ms. Moore would have been here to present it. She's our Director of Career and Technical Education, School Choice. She's got another commitment with the Nevada Department of Education, but I'll try to rattle through this programming aspect of it. She is here. All right. So maybe she can go up. Mr. Chair, Gia Moore.
Go ahead. Introduce your name for the record.
Good morning. Good morning. Gia Moore, Assistant Superintendent, College and Career Readiness and School Choice for the record. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about this new exciting school. The programming came from a really well-considered space. So we looked at the surrounding high schools to see what program offerings that they had. And we didn't want to impede upon that. So at Sierra Vista, at Desert Oasis, and then our Career and Technical Academy at Southwest CTA. So we were really trying to research some options to prepare students for jobs that don't yet exist. So this new school gives us the opportunity to do that with the Innovation Academy. And so students will be engaging in personalized learning, critical thinking, design thinking, learning about concepts of adaptability, but all through this lens of project-based learning and experiential learning. And then focusing also on product design, entrepreneurship. We're looking at having a robust partnership with our business and industry. And the stars are kind of aligning with this project in that the Southwest has been identified as an innovation corridor. And so we look to have some robust partnerships with that. Some key features of the school that we are looking at to really facilitate that program is immersive labs and tactile labs. So for example, in the immersive labs, students might be engaging in VR, augmented reality. So an immersive experience allowing them to sort of test out their idea or product or present it in a creative way, and then possibly even designing that program or that product or prototype within the tactile lab. So students are really getting a wide array of experiences at this school, also with the opportunity to take dual enrollment to be college and career ready upon graduation.
We're very excited about this. Next slide, actually, Justin, please. The programming of this is both going to be very forward-looking, both from a curricular and a facility front, that could be a model that gets replicated long-term with us. So decision number 3 then, next slide please, is to defer all project openings 1 year from school year 27-28 and beyond, with the exception of Matt Kelly Elementary School. So certainly we hope the presentation that's been shared here today, we certainly want to acknowledge construction costs continue to increase both on the labor and material front. And we don't want to, some projects may no longer be able to be funded if we don't take action as a committee in a district. That projects will naturally start to self-select if no action is taken. Due to the anticipated construction workload of CCSD projects alone, and granted there is a large saturation with Formula One, other activities on the Strip, and then other agencies and the public sector agencies also having similar bonding capacities in the current state. There's a lot of work out there, and we're starting to see some of that selectivity by some of our contractors. So being able to ratchet down, be very strategic about it is maybe a goal that we want to have in this revision, in this recommendation in particular. And then obviously due to declining enrollment and lessening birth rates, we certainly want to revisit the 2021 sentiments of where we should be spending money versus not. And are some of those assumptions from 21 still true today? So certainly we're going to enter into, and in coordination with the chair and the trustee moving forward, there is an annual cycle we'd like to get into where we do work collaboratively with the Bond Oversight Committee, developing focus areas, scenarios, holding public meetings to hear some of the actions that the Bond Oversight Committee will bring forward to the trustees as recommendations, and ultimately having the committee work with us and those recommendations to the trustees. That's at least a 1-year horizon that we'd like to get to. All the while, a facility master plan is something that we're going to endeavor to enter into in the near future. Now, for those that might not be aware of what these are, this is a robust year-long process that's very input-driven, very community-centric. It allows us to take a step back, hold some of those lenses. I know one that in particular that we've talked about here as a committee is the diversity, equity, and inclusiveness lens as one of many stakeholder lenses that we want to run any proposed capital improvement plans through, but there would be many others of our workforce connection alignments, some of our agency alignments about maybe some projects they would like to be working with the district on. So this as a vehicle offers a very good opportunity for agencies and others to talk about what those outcomes need to be. And then last but not least, we certainly want to acknowledge that the interim superintendent position, until filled, is a voice that should be part of that facility master plan. So this plan allows that hire to happen, and then as well, the board's future vision with Focus 2024 now concluded, and the board currently setting their vision in the near future here. We want a facility master plan that's in alignment with both that superintendent that's selected and that future board vision, so the plan is not created in a vacuum and separate and apart from that. So pushing the project timelines a year allows us to not make $100 million, $200 million commitments that we might not want to be making as a district and as a committee. So this allows for that to some room to breathe to make sure we reprioritize that capital improvement plan. With that, the rest of the pages here are merely a save as of the revision 5 deck that you all have previously seen, albeit with the updated decks in alignment with that 1-year deferral of projects from school year 27-28 and beyond. With that, is there any comments and questions?
Okay, anybody here on the board would like any questions for Mr. McLaughlin pertaining to 2.07? Go ahead, Mr. Williams.
Yvette Williams, thank you for, I like this presentation. I would like to just mention that I know this seems like a way off since we just got our bond approved a couple years ago, but I do think we need to be thinking about our future bond amount. So instead of asking for the same amount for renewal, I think we need to be looking at and need some direction from Mr. Gowdy and all of them. Just a comment and observation for the future. Did you want to comment on that at all before I move to my other?
Yeah, Rodney Phelps for the record. Our next issuance is going to be in, for the next year, be $600 million currently that we're going to be proposing to the Debt Management Commission. How we take that out in either tranches would be possibly $400 million and then $200 million. If for some reason that we're expending dollars beyond that, we will go back and prepare to go back before the Debt Management Commission to ask for them to approval for additional bond funding to do more schools.
Thank you.
If I may, Ms. Williams.
Yes.
Both from the finance front, but then also from just say maybe a capital improvement front. We certainly want to look long-term. I think that's the challenge we always get into, that we want to look holistically, what's our plan for 15 years? But then we commit to things, pseudo-commit to things 15 years out that may or may not be the actuality once dollars get there. So we want to find that sweet spot where we're saying what we're doing with bond issuances, but not overextending ourselves because things do change. So it's a recognition of that as well.
So since you brought that up, I'll just go into my next comment was around, you spoke about alignment, which I love that. I love that. I'm very pragmatic, so I love all these puzzle pieces coming together. But we could add, I think, to facility master modernization plan is our future bond that we're requesting from the state as well. And so, thank you that Matt Kelly is not on that list of delaying that again. So thank you for that. Also, I wanted to make comments on a couple things. I was looking at the Innovation Academy, and I love this. I love these innovation ideas that are coming through. So Gia, thank you for that. However, this is in the Southwest. This is in Spring Valley, so this is my area. As you know, I used to serve as chair of the Spring Valley Town Advisory Board. And one of the things I'm concerned about is the capacity of 1,500. I know there's a cost issue, but what would the cost be if we were to build this school at the 2,500? And let me tell you my reasoning for feeling this way is we're talking about an opening of 2028. 7 years later, we have over 1,050 students estimated that we're adding to Desert Oasis and Sierra Vista, who's already overcrowded by 1,000. So my calculation, we're already at 2,050 overcrowded 7 years from the time that school is completed. So my question is, why not just go ahead and build it at the 2,500 capacity so that we're able to? And my other reasoning for that is, as you all know that know me, and you all do, especially Gia, is that there's concerns about more access for these kind of programs for student groups who are underrepresented in these schools that have access to these opportunities. And with it being a choice school, kids can get their way there. They won't be able to use the school bus, but parents can get them there, or they can take public transportation to get there. And so this is an opportunity for other students who maybe wouldn't have an opportunity to get to to participate in a school like this, to be able to do that. So from an equity and inclusion standpoint, I see the benefit of this being a larger school as well, to allow for them to take advantage of an excellent school experience. So what would that cost be if we just went on and did it at the $2,500?
Brandon McLaughlin for the record. So I'll start with the cost item. There's a transportation piece as well I'll cover. And then if Rick can add any commentary on maybe proposed capacity differences within that. Certainly, so the revision 5 had a 2,700 seat high school plan for that. We went through 15% design on that. We've presented on the cost that, a range 40 to 60% is what our current estimates were coming in at versus budgets set pre-pandemic or shortly thereafter, not realizing the last 3 years of budgets or inflationary practices. So we had budgeted 170 million because historical data would indicate that we could afford, that was how much it should have cost.
And that was 2,700 students.
Yeah,
correct?
2,700, but that 15% estimate was over 225 million, which the delta on that is very difficult. So that's an entire elementary school rather than the incrementals that you saw on some of the elementary and middle schools otherwise in the bond. So that's why there was hesitation and pause to say, is a 2,700 seat high school in this area actually necessary? Which I'll let Mr. Baldwin cover in a minute, but the transportation zone is certainly something that came up in our discussions of this. So these choice high schools do have a transportation zone. Anyone can kick me if I'm saying the wrong thing, but they do have transportation zones, and through analysis, about 85% of these choice programs, students do elect or reside within that transportation zone. So there is, in fact, some of that transportation provided at these choice schools. So Mr. Baldwin, anything on the other capacity items that you brought up?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, Ms. Williams. So just a bit of a correction in what Mr. McLaughlin just mentioned. So the district-wide average for career and technical academies is 85%, but remember, Northeast CTA just opened up this year, and there's some flux between that school and the other two schools. But to point out specifically the Southwest CTA, which would ultimately represent the exact same area, has a 92% 92% of the students enrolled at Southwest CTA are coming from within that transportation zone. So, and that is the highest of all the CTAs.
Well, that's the area where we're having the highest growth.
Right.
In that area. Yeah.
So, Ms. Williams, also remember, so South CTA is scheduled to open in 2026, and due to the proximity of South CTA and Desert Oasis community in that area, and there's some very nice transportation corridors to provide access for those students. So we are expecting to see some relief to Desert Oasis from South CTA as well. And then what we do is our office looks at, we can see in a high school zone how many total kindergarten students in every grade. And we are projecting for what that trajectory is. And as previously discussed, those high school grades will be coming down as they're replaced by much smaller grade levels coming into the system. Yes, there's a lot of new residential developments in that area, but the current student population is also significantly smaller, and the students that we're forecasting to come into those new residential developments are continually smaller due to housing prices and costs.
Mr. Baldwin, how many students, I forgot what it was that we anticipate at South CTA?
How many students
is capacity at South CTA opening in 2026?
Oh, 1,800, excuse me.
1,800, okay.
So Ms. Williams, if I may, I just want to correct. So South CTA is opening summer of 25.
25, okay. And so that would be, okay, so then that would help alleviate that number that I was looking at of over 2,000 kids in 7 years. So that kind of would help with that. Okay. All right, darn. I'm pushing for this bigger school.
Go ahead, Abraham.
I love this idea for this school. I'm a product of the school district within the construction industry, and now I'm a business owner. So I look forward to collaborating as a business owner and with the workforce development. My question is, with this school being planned, let's say we get a lot of residents decide to come in and we get more students and the predictions are off. Can we try to incorporate in this site plan, maybe like field to be used or set aside for, let's say if we needed to add an additional to get to that capacity, a bigger capacity? So like, let's say like a phase 2 of this project in case we needed to build better, versus bringing in trailers and stuff because suddenly we have more students there. So if we can incorporate that in this part of the plans as a plan B of, for future in case we need to do it, can that be incorporated? So that way that we can add on to it, that's what I want to say. So that way in case we get more students there. I think the school's great.
Yeah, we certainly can look into that. There's certainly a consideration of how we expand on the current campus, or if there is truly new development that isn't being tracked, which we tend to track all of it, we believe. A secondary campus such as this could be something downstream that's looked at if it's successful here. So we've weighed both options.
Thank you. That's all my questions for this.
Go ahead, Matt.
Matthew DeFalco, I got a couple questions. First of all, I brought this with me. You guys showed these heat maps to us in previous meetings, and I think there was one for elementary schools, one for middle schools, one for high schools, and you talked about specific needs and the enrollment capacity of the schools and the neighborhoods around the valley and the needs. In this number 1, where you talk about the elementary school that we're recommending building, is in the only red part of the valley. So I think we hit it right on target. It's exactly what we need to be doing, and I support that 100%. When I look at the presentation, there's a tentative opening date of the high school of 2028. I don't think I see the tentative opening date for the elementary school. Do we know that yet?
So Brandon McLaughlin, for the record, the Board of School Trustees has procured the land for where this elementary could be sited. So by conservative estimates, we could have it open as early as 2028, 2029 school year.
Excellent, thank you. The agenda also said there's possible action on this item. Just want to make sure that I understand what's going on. What is the possible action on this item?
Go ahead.
I believe you guys would be recommending this for approval by the Board of School Trustees.
Thank you. That's all from me, Chair.
Thank you, Matt. Is there anybody else on the board that would like to speak? Go ahead, Gina.
Hi, Gina Blackman-Taylor for the record. Thank you for this. We can look back at minutes and see we've been asking about when we're going to be able to make adjustments to CIP 5, so this is much needed. But to that question, one thing I really do want to appreciate and notice is that tie-in of the programmatic aspect of it. It's really valuable. We know that we're not doing our work in a vacuum, so it is really valuable to understand the programmatic element to any of these conversations. And I appreciate the clear forethought that was put into devising this as essentially a stopgap measure to give us time to get to that capital master plan, as well as input from a new superintendent or permanent superintendent, as well as newly elected Board of Trustee members. So I appreciate that. In talking about flexibility, it just occurred to me that we were talking about these 1 or 2 bids for some of these bigger projects. And this is where you get into my ignorance. What are options for sort of pulling bids if you feel like whatever numbers you're coming in are just too high to make that project not feasible, or because once they've been approved by the Board of Trustees, you're committed no matter what that singular or second bid comes at? So can you speak to what flexibility you have in responding to a situation where you feel like a bid is just coming in at way too high?
Ms. Blackman-Taylor, Brandon McLaughlin, for the record, we certainly have contingency in our budgets when we approve or when we bring forward recommendations to you guys and the trustees. So there's a little bit of wiggle room that we budgetarily just are customary in the bid award process. But When it gets above some uncomfortable percentages, the 15-20% range, it's pause to say what's going on here. And often we do that. I think one that we brought up in particular was Chaparral, and we've talked through that in the past of what's going on here. What's that? Laughlin as well was another one. So if it doesn't smell right, we do ask questions, and oftentimes we'll rebid if the number is truly too high, just to get a secondary pulse on the market.
So you do have some capacity to sort of fight back against what numbers you're seeing in limited ways.
Yes.
Thank you very much. That's all my questions.
Rodney Fouts for the record. I'd like to add something to that. What we found too is when we go out and we rebid it, it's either coming in at the same price or a higher price down the road. So we run that risk of now the project is going to cost us even more dollars to build. So let's see, the risk of doing the rebid.
In that case, if there's a rebid or that risk of those prices going higher, I understand that part of this plan is to push some of this market saturation down the line. Are we essentially getting into a situation where we now then have another 10 projects that have escalated 20-30% in cost and made them no longer tenable?
Brandon McLaughlin, for the record, I'll start it, and I believe these two might have something to say as well. So certainly it's something we weighed, because if and this is just a ballpark figure, but if we're a $3.7 billion capital improvement plan and year over year we're experiencing 10% escalation, that's $370 million that we could be losing. But I mean, we've already encumbered it, so it's a very more nuanced equation to it. But I think the risk is that we encumber a $100 million contract when we shouldn't have. We replace a middle school that we maybe shouldn't have because of many other factors that maybe a modernization would have worked at that campus given the enrollment that school is seeing. So I think the risk reward is, yes, we're going to see about that year escalation, but we may make more strategic decisions with those dollars instead.
Sorry, thank you, Gina Blackman-Taylor, for the record. Thank you for that, and sorry if I cut you guys off. But then to that end, there is perhaps an anticipation that some of these later projects could then be altered depending on what a new superintendent, new board of trustees looks to amend or add to or to take away from a future revision.
Yeah, Ms. Blackman-Taylor, Brandon McLaughlin, for the record, certainly those two bodies would be heavy voices within this, and the facility master plan would also be, I would say, the community as well. The community might not desire a certain school to be replaced over another for the quantitative reasons that staff often presents, but helping the community come along with that decision making as well could be part of it.
So in the immediate term, we're relieving some of that market saturation. We're looking to control some of those costs in terms of that spending, but then we're also perhaps backburning some things that may end up being decided on a different path based on money and priorities at a later date.
Yeah, Ms. Blackman-Taylor, Brandon McLaughlin, for the record, certainly there could be a hard-nosed CIP that came before you making a lot of those recommendations, and it probably could have gone less productive, less productive for sure. So we certainly wanted to be conscientious of the complexity of what's going on with the superintendent position and the volatility of the board with the current vision aspects being expired and not being quite detailed yet. So it's things that we just have to weigh within it. But yes, some of these could not look like how they currently look because there's maybe different sentiment that's expressed throughout that process.
Did I cut you gentlemen off in terms of wanting to respond?
Rodney Fouts for the record. Part of slide 4 was also to provide that distribution, not to do bell curve, to make it more flat. By doing that, we potentially will get more bidders bidding on the project, which hopefully will bring the cost down as well.
Thank you for your time.
Go ahead, Ms. Williams.
I forgot to ask, because I got caught up in innovation. For the construction, for I'm using as examples, slide 24 and 25, construction cafeteria addition to El Dorado Bonanza and Basic High Schools, and then the William Bennett Elementary School and Laughlin Middle High School, where you're combining all in one building, K through 12. Are these being delayed too by 1 year, or no? No.
Ms. Williams, Brandon McLaughlin for the record, no, those are delivered prior to 27, so it's things from 27 school year
From 20
beyond
okay.
we're
Oh,
proposing.
okay. Thank you for that clarity. Okay, good, because I know that they really need it. My other question then, when you're dealing with, and we've been talking about making schools whole, are we just going to do the addition to the cafeteria and not deal with some of the other issues of these schools?
Brandon McLaughlin for the record, Bonanza is one that was a comprehensive modernization, so we were making that one a lot more whole, plus the cafeteria addition. El Dorado and Basic would certainly have to be part of another discussion in line with regulation and the facility condition index of it.
Yeah, that would be my concern. I know with Bonanza, like you've done the air conditioning and, other things, but that would be my only concern is, again, that whole bandaging that we tend to do. The other thing on Las Vegas Academy, so Las Vegas Academy, their 10-year plan still stays as is, so there's no impact there for delays?
Brandon McLaughlin for the record, yeah, that one currently stays as is because from 27 school year on, there's only one phase, so that certainly would be up for consideration when the time comes for that, but that's phase 3 that's into that territory. The phase 1 is already underway. Phase 2 is final stages of design, so phase 3 would be the only part that really is up for debate, but that one was fluid enough because it was a phased replacement with indeterminate dates in the CIP, so we would just have to evaluate that against everything else as well.
Okay. My only other comment was on the New Choice School for the West. Again, making note of the estimated enrollment for 2035. We're adding an additional 1,869 students, but right now we have 2,540, well, the capacity is 2,546, and currently enrolled is 3,243. So by the time the school is finished in 31, we're already 700 students already, again, with only a capacity of 1,000. So I don't know. Maybe this is something that'll work its way out as we go, because we're talking, we're not talking yet. Tomorrow we're going to start. But I think it's something we need to keep our eye on really closely, because I'm just not so sure that our capacity for some of this is quite right. So, and then lastly, I just want to comment that as we look at all of these new schools, just wanting to remind our commitment to our older schools that we make sure that equity, diversity, inclusion in our funding is equitable funding, and that those students in those older schools have access to the same quality programs as these new schools. So we need to make sure we are putting money aside for those investments.
Ms. Williams, Brandon McLaughlin, for the record, two things I just want to briefly touch on. Certainly, I don't know that it's a 1+1 of those two cells, say. Like Rick's presentation in April went through and what we shared, I mean, we're going to naturally attrition down right now because birth rates are declining. So yes, we're graduating classes of 2,600, 2,500, but that won't be the case 5 years from now, 6 years from now. So that the school, the 8th graders rolling into that school zone won't be that. It'll be much less.
Yeah.
So
I figure we'll have to have a lot of flexibility with this. It's always moving,
right.
But I just wanted to just say that, and yeah. Thank you. Great presentation, too. Thank you.
Go ahead, Abraham.
I have three questions. The first one is there a way we can simplify the index scoring instead of, 0.71? Is there a way we can change that to make it like maybe an ABC type of deal, like simplify it, that index reporting for all these schools? So that way, not only us, but the general public can understand these on a different scale, or either more simplified version, I guess you could say.
Yeah, Mr. Cameo, Brandon McLaughlin for the record. The FCI, as currently reported, is a part of the regulation of what we share out of it, but certainly the reporting of facility condition indexes could be something relayed in a facility master plan, because oftentimes districts across the country do just that. They transition a number to, say, a letter or even a smiley face, some variant thereof that the committee so desires. But it's certainly something we can weigh.
Yeah, I mean, I think if it's an A, B, F, it would just make it more simple for everybody in the public to understand. And then my next question is with moving forward, are we considering I know we're considering school safety, but are we looking into the different technologies that can be used for metal detectors for these new builds for the safety of all our students? And I'm not talking just your normal basic metal detectors, because that's not what there's out there, but I've seen at some commercial properties like Circus, for example, they have a nice pole that they can scan 30, 40 people at the same time. And then are we considering that type of technology in these conversations with our design and planning for future schools? Because I hate to say it, active shooting is still a thing that's happening in our nation, and we want to create obviously the safest facilities for our students.
Thank you, Jason Gotti, for the record. So safety's obviously high on priority list. We've dedicated a lot of money from our statutory reserve account to start that process. So I wouldn't say there's any definitive plans on making permanent components as it relates to metal detectors or systems like that. But we have received, or the board did approve 3 vendors to provide essentially portable, pretty much what you see at most sporting events these days. And we have started to implement a plan where we will be using that statutory reserve account to roll out those to high school. I'm going to be careful. High schools with varsity sports such as football and basketball, and essentially piloting those programs. Additionally, in the past, we have used similar devices, and they're not metal detectors, they're weapons detection services. So you can walk through 10 at a time and 15 at a time, and it just picks something up as long as you have the right number of people. So we are going down that path as a first step to evaluate how that works. And those are what we consider typically at least a better first step than the kind of the permanent components, because you can't move, and if you pick the wrong one and build a construction, it's harder to change. So as we utilize that piece that can be used at a football game, and then the next day could be used at a basketball game, and then perhaps the principal wants to say, hey, on this day, I'm going to use it in my front gate. So that's where we are.
Yeah, and so just to follow, because with the numbers that we seen with the school district, we had, I forgot, over 300 weapons confiscated this last school year, and obviously with a system like this can help deteriorate any incident. That's what we want to get to. So I would like to have these safety measures not just available during football and basketball games, but during the rush hour of everybody getting to school. But I also don't want your basic TSA checkpoint. I don't want it to look like a freaking prison. I want the kids to be able to enter, 10, 20, 30 at a time freely. And then if somebody is carrying something, that detection system, then that way our security team, school police, or administrators can say, hey, young man, can I talk to you? And pull them to the side versus making a big, public scene, because that's not what the schools are for. But we want to continue these conversations and those. So I look forward to just getting more idea of those 3 vendors that you mentioned, so we can continue these conversations and continue to have a great school system for Clark County. No more questions, though.
Go ahead, Matt.
Matthew DeFalco, page 30, the new high school in the southeast, it looks like it's in Henderson. Do we have a site picked out for that yet? And if we do, where is that?
Brandon McLaughlin, for the record, no, we have not selected a site for that yet.
Okay, thank you. That's all for me.
Are there any other questions from the committee pertaining to Capital Improvement Program Revision 6? Hearing none, is there any public comment now for 2.07 Capital Improvement Program Revision 6? Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you. I just wanted, sitting here hearing about the bids coming in high, have you reviewed 393.030? Because it gives you a flexibility to do a fee-for-service type construction project. And that just may give you, as the bids are coming in up higher and higher, there may be an opportunity there to look at that part of it. And then 393.103 is the older schools, so you might want to review how that has been looked at over the years. If it morphed as the FCI went differently, because I know that when I wrote that law, we wanted to make sure that the older schools were not neglected, that they actually got bumped up faster than just the growth that was challenging trading that. So the conversation was interesting about that part of it, but those are two things to reflush. And maybe there's some tweaking that can be done to make sure that we stay with that intent, which was that the older facilities and those in minority areas were dealt with sooner than some of the new ones. Thank you. Oh, and then you have Canarelli's. They're doing 3,000 homes supposedly up in the southwest near Red Rock. It was in the paper 2 days ago. Do they notify you still as developers? We tried to get them to require to do certain things, but have we reviewed going back to the legislature to make them have to actually pay for more than what they ever pay for? Just something to think about. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Is there any more public comment pertaining to Capital Improvement Program Revision 6? Please give your name for the record, please.
Brenda Talley. Just real quick, because obviously a lot of these new fancy high schools and things go to the new growth areas that a lot of times are more affluent areas. And yet some of our students that are in the lower socioeconomic areas are the students that would benefit the most from the opportunities that these schools have. I know, and talking about football fields and things, Rancho High School was built in 1955. I'm a graduate, showing my age here, in 1973, and that was the first year we had a football field. We actually shared our home games with Las Vegas High School, our biggest rival. So when it was our home game, we were still at their field. So we had a lot of times burning of fields and stuff like that. But that was a great opportunity when I hated to see Rancho torn down, but it was made into the aerodynamics or something program. My granddaughter at Arbor is in the medical one, that some of these older schools to have those same opportunities. So those schools that need those opportunities the most, that most likely won't be going to college at the same percentage of some of these other areas, would be graduating with a skill that they could use.
Thank you. Is there any more public comment when it pertains to 2.07 Capital Improvement Program Revision 6? Hearing none, then I think it was now time to committee members to put a motion on the floor to approve 2.07 Capital Improvement Program Revision 6. I'm open floor for a motion, please.
Do you want to take these decision by decision as we did CIP 5, or are there any objections to doing? I'll do it decision.
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion that we recommend approval for CIP Revision 6, Decision 1, the site of elementary school location 1 of 10.
We have a motion on the floor to approve Decision 1.
Second.
Matt DeFalco, we have a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay.
Aye.
Thank you, Byron. Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, motion will pass. Go ahead, please.
I'll make a motion that we recommend approval for Revision 6, Decision 2, the Innovation Academy High School in Southwest Valley.
We have a motion on the floor for number 2 on Revision 6.
I second it.
We have a second by Ms.
Even.
Williams. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, motion carries.
I make a motion that we recommend for the Board of Trustees to approve Revision 6, Decision 3, that all projects scheduled to open school year 2027-28 and all subsequent years delay by 1 year, with the exception of Matt Kelly.
We have a motion on the floor to approve Decision 3, Revision 6. Do I have a second?
I second that.
Ms. Williams, she's a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say nay.
Aye.
Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. All right, then. We are now going on to subject 2.08, review of regulation 7112 for possible amendments. This will be Mr. McLaughlin. The floor is all yours, buddy.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Brandon McLaughlin for the record. Before you is proposed regulation 7112 amendments. In accordance with GP 16, this is just a discussion item. Obviously, there's been some working groups of this committee in the past. We wanted to bring this forward as an update. Then it will follow the customary process contained within GP 16, which is executive leadership review, and ultimately put forward to the Board of School Trustees for approval. So the proposed amendments are listed before you. Obviously, a lot of them are just terminology in general, updating CMP to CIP, and then as well codifying some of the facility portfolio condition indexing. So saying that every 5 years we'll touch it is by the sheer volume of how many campuses we have. That's in 2A. So without laboriously going through this, if there's any questions, we'll be more than happy to have any responses or follow-ups. Thank you.
All right, committee members, I'll give you guys a few minutes to review this because it's a little extensive. So if you do have a question, now would be the time to speak up, but I'll give you a few minutes to review this. Go ahead, Ms. Williams.
Sorry, I just want to see if we can simplify the recommendations, if we can add that to, and maybe come up with A, B, C, D versus the numbers for the FCI portion of it.
Does that pertain to this topic? Yes. Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Bender.
We'll try to resolve that somehow. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Ms. Williams.
Thank you for this. I along with my first vice chair, was on this committee originally to work on this, so really excited to see it, an update on this revision. Thank you, Brandon, for leading on that very much. I just want to say that, you know, you've been doing an incredible job. I just want to say that. Procedure 2, Step A, Procedure 2A, Step 1, Facility Condition Assessment. I want to ask a question. The historical significance is defined as the existence of an official national, state, or local designation that governs modifications to a particular facility. Would designation as a redevelopment zone apply here? Or in what type of, what do you mean by significant as defined as existence of an official blah, blah? What does that mean? And my question is, would redevelopment, if it's identified as a redevelopment zone, would that qualify?
Ms. Williams, Brandon McLaughlin, for the record. I wasn't there the last time this was modified, so certainly just by reading the text of it, though, it's saying that historical significance has a prevalence in this policy, and then it's also then defining that. Redevelopment areas are not explicitly mentioned here, so if it's so desired from the committee in our consideration of bringing this forward, and if you would like to see that, I'd just ask you to state that.
Well, I think it's something that should be at least discussed and before making that decision to do that. I think it does carry a lot of weight because most of those redevelopment zones are in those older areas where we have those older schools. And so maybe that might be a good way to, some commonality, you know, otherwise it's very subjective, you know, as to what's, you know, old school. I mean, I guess you can go by year, but I think in redevelopment zones, the city and the county is already putting money aside, sometimes federal dollars, and maybe there's some monies to be had. Maybe there's opportunity. I mean, a lot of our municipalities are doing those tax credits and things like that if it's centered around improving education. So maybe there's some opportunity to seek some funding to help with those renovations in the older areas if they fall in their redevelopment zone. So I just wanted to throw it out as something maybe we can add to the discussion and see if there's any relevance in that, any benefit to the district. And then under 2B, 2, program analysis. This analysis is required when FCE is calculated to be between 0.40 and 0.60. Facilities with an FCI in this range will be evaluated for program adequacy. The program analysis may consider facility age, percent of students enrolled versus program capacity, which we've been talking about today, and portable classrooms required to accommodate the current educational specifications. Very excited to see the portable classrooms there. I would like to ask, how will those portables be analyzed? In other words, what would be the weight given in an analysis in that metrics? What kind of weight would that have? So I think that's something we would need to kind of drill down on a little bit. And then the number of portables, are we looking at versus, for example, number of portables versus the number of classrooms on that site? Are we looking at number of portables and the length of time they've been on a campus, for example? I mean, those kinds of things, just so that we're very clear in this policy going forward, because as you know, that was a big issue with several of our older school campuses where we were stuck with portables for decades. So, and then, let's see, B, all school campuses with FCI less than .40 will be checked for recent improvements that may skew the FCI rating downward and conceal the existence of poor facilities. All campuses affected by this situation will be highlighted for discussion by the Bond Oversight Committee and the Board of Trustees. Hallelujah.
That's in there.
It has?
Yeah, that's already there.
It was?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I missed that before. I like that, so don't mess with that one. I like that one a lot. And then so we're again looking at making facility whole. And so, I don't know, maybe we need to emphasize that one and put it up as a higher priority. I don't know, but anyway. And then D, again, having that portable classrooms in there again, addressing that required to accommodate the current educational standards, again, as a priority. Thank you for including that, and I fully support what you've gotten, what you have going here. Thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Is there any other questions from the board pertaining to this?
I have one,
Matt.
Mr. Chair. Matthew DeFalco. Step 3C, from will to may, what is it that you think we need to know in terms of repercussions for changing that language from will to may? Page 3, step 3, the prioritization of needs, 1C, from will to may is the proposed language change.
Mr. DeFalco, Brandon McLaughlin for the record. I'm going to see if Mr. Baldwin has anything to elaborate on it, but it merely, this is indicating that we will consider annual operating costs, so there'd be an obligation to, which obviously is one strong component to it, but may just means that operating costs could be weighed into it. So sometimes operation costs might not balance out the capital costs. So it's just more leeway to look at those things versus not obligated to. But obviously we do because we want to have quantitative objective data for you. So it would merely just be for a little more latitude where it's a component to it, but not necessarily the decision point along that data.
Thanks for expanding on that. That's all for me, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Matt. Are there any other? Ms. Gina Blackman.
Gina Blackman Taylor for the record. Yeah, I just want to echo Yvette's point. This has been 2 years or more in the making, so it's very exciting to see this on an agenda with. And similar to Yvette, I want to really celebrate and praise that inclusion of the portable classrooms. That was a sticking point, I know, because it makes sense. They are not a permanent facility, so I understand from the facility point of view why there was a contention on that, because they shouldn't be evaluated as permanent facilities. But I really appreciate feeling heard on that idea that it is a component to how we prioritize which schools we rebuild and how we factor that in. So to see that language there, whether those details and drilling down get added, but thank you for that and being heard on that. It was a long process, and I really appreciate seeing this. My one question, and it's more just wanting to understand. On page 2, I guess, what is this? Procedures, B, 1, that very last phrase, will support a replacement recommendation if the facility is 50 years or older. If it is under 50 years, what would be? I guess I'm not understanding exactly why that language was added. What's the distinction being made in terms of adding that phrase?
Ms. Blackman-Taylor, Brandon McLaughlin for the record, I believe that was added merely because most buildings of ours should be lasting 5 years or 50 years as a anticipated lifespan. So if we're not at 50 years, then there's probably other things worthwhile to that. So it could potentially be modernized in lieu of replacing because we didn't get the full life of that. Obviously, the facility condition index will tell a more accurate picture of that, but 50 years as a criteria is just one we want to keep in mind because there's ones that would be great to replace, but they're not 50 years old. So there's a lot of need across the district. So who are we to say that a horrible FCI is just one component to it, but age should also be another because that same building might not have been maintained the same way, just to happen to be a little older, right? So.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. And then, the one thing about the section that Yvette flagged already about the FCI and that being highlighted for discussion by the Bond Oversight Committee if recent repairs have essentially obscured the overall quality of the building. When we had this conversation and when this issue first came up regarding CIP Revision 5, one of the challenges was with just the overwhelming amount of information and how challenging it is to get those FCI numbers overall. And so in a practical sense, facilities themselves being able to identify those schools that fell into that category. So what are your strategies or options for making sure that as facilities you are in a position to be able to practically flag those ones that are important for them to be highlighted for our discussion?
Yeah, Ms. Blackman-Taylor, Brandon McLaughlin for the record. Honestly, that's something that part of the facility master plan that we would look to visualize a bit more with that data. I think a lot of our data is data and it's not presentable data more often than not, or at least in a digestible way. So to Mr. Camayo's point about the FCI being a good, better, best, which is actually in line with how some of NDE requires the district to report on how some of our structures are. I think certainly within how we structure a facility master plan and that CIP into the future would be, hey, there's this bucket that we are by regulation intended to bring forward with those kind of varying FCIs per building. So to be determined in a future process for sure.
Well, and to that end, also in those cases where a new building or a new addition skews that number, does that need to be written into the policy to kind of make sure that we're hitting those the same way? Or do you think that language is adequate to cover a new building that would lift the average of the entire campus?
I think the policy reads in line with how we're going to look at it. So I wouldn't recommend any additional amendments to it.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, do we have any other questions? Go ahead, Abraham.
Abraham Camille for the record. On page 3, CCE, can you elaborate where it says the CIP working group? Like, what consists of that working group? Like, who's involved?
So Brandon McLaughlin for the record, Mr. Camayo. A little bit of this is antiquated language, and honestly, I was looking through the policy back from 2002 that created this very regulation just earlier in the week. That working group is not well defined by regulation. It's loosely by district internal policies about who's a part of those. I can say the way I've structured it in being in this leadership position is we tend to involve the current technical comprehensive planning team. It's not in a construction vacuum, but very multidisciplinary is what we try to approach it with. And then ultimately we look at a series of considerations brought forward through all those individuals to then what you guys see as a recommendation after going through other vetting processes with the superintendent.
Could we add those groups so that way, not just us, but future members can know what this working group consists of, which departments and like who's in these conversations?
Mr. Commander, Brandon McLaughlin for the record. You certainly could recommend that as a part of it. I think it'd be premature given the facility master plan that's upcoming, because very much I think we're going to learn a lot from that, and then potentially this could change as a result of how that process goes. So very much, like I said, this was created from 2 cycles ago's master plan to reflect what that process was. We very much could do the same, say 2 years from now, in reaction to how this next facility master plan goes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, do we have any other questions pertaining to these amendments as presented from the committee? Hearing none, is there any public comment pertaining to the possible amendments in Regulation 7112?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Christian Kiliani. I just wanted to understand better. It sounds like the FCI, the 20%, makes it a 5-year rolling. Is that, I think, is what that language is doing at this point? So, for example, Lundy would have qualified last year for the 5-year roll and wasn't done. Lundy is also a 50-year or older school, so again, if financing's needed, you should have it someplace budgeted. But I think what the intent is on page 2, sub 2, is to make sure that the older schools are recognized and don't get lost in the mix. Is that the intent of the language? That's what I'm just trying to understand, because I wasn't quite sure. And then you, Mr. DeFalco, asked about the will to may. So now if they said they just want the flexibility to do it, then how will they make a determination if you have an identical score? There should be at least a minimum or some standard so that you just don't leave it willy-nilly, so to speak, in my opinion. So those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. That was going to be my question on that language when it comes to will and may. It seems like you're more obligated when you say will instead of may. Could you elaborate on that or give me a little explanation as to why that was changed?
Mr. Lopez, Brandon McLaughlin for the record. Beyond what I've already said, no. I mean, it's been a multi-pronged approach to this, and I don't recall exactly how we said may versus will, honestly, but certainly latitude, like I said, operating expenses is one of many criteria. And as we get into master plan, operating expenses will be one of even more criteria. So I think this was just a little bit of latitude to have a part of the discussion, but not a driving force behind it.
Thank you, Brendan. Okay, do we have any other public comment pertaining to 2.08, the amendments presented to us by Regulation 7112? Hearing none, we will move forward on to 2.09, questions and/or removal of items on motions, liaison taskings. I do have one here that's presented. Ms. Williams, you can go ahead and elaborate.
I do have an update. We're making progress. Yeah. So with Dr. Barton's sad departure, I have been at the direction of Brandon to meet with Gia, who heads up the CTE department, so I will be reaching out to her on that. I didn't want to bother her with the end of the school year, and I know she's been pretty swamped. I've seen her at many legislative meetings and so forth. So I will be reaching out to her via email to get a date that we can sit down and begin those conversations. But I think that we probably won't be able to expect a report in the next couple months. I think this is probably, I think we're going to have to allow her at least, 3 to 6 months because she's going to have to pretty much start from scratch. I know Dr. Barton and I had many discussions, but I don't know if he has left her the file. I will see him tomorrow, though, and so I will ask him if he has some information that he can share with her so that she's not starting fresh. So that's where we are with that.
Thank you, Ms. Williams.
Thank you.
Are there any questions from the committee members pertaining to liaisons, motions, and taskings for Ms. Williams? Hearing none, is there any public comment pertaining to removal of items, motions, and taskings pertaining to what Ms. Williams just stated? Hearing none, we will move on to public comment 3.01. Our items are just, let me look at this real quick. Are there any other items pertaining that we do have to take action on this agenda that we have not addressed up to this point? We're good? Okay, go ahead. Floor is all yours.
Good afternoon. My name is Jenna Evans, and I will be a junior at Spring Valley High School this fall. I'm here today to ask about incorporating universal design into future CCSD buildings and major renovations. Before I start, I want to give a statistic. About 13% of the U.S. population is disabled. This makes the roughly 42 million disabled individuals one of the largest minority groups in the country. Additionally, disabled students make up about 15% of the national public school system. My younger brother, Edison, is one of them. Edison has cerebral palsy, which requires him to use a wheelchair, and he previously attended Bonner Elementary School. During his time there, a new building was constructed, and it was a very nice building. However, the main entrance on the playground were stairs that weren't accessible for him. So in order for him to get to and from class, he and his aide would have to walk to the back of the building where it was level just to enter. This would take longer and in some cases caused him to be late to class. This was not only a burden for Edison and his aide, but also for his ability to learn. And while this building was compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act, it was just not sufficient. There is a solution to this, however, and it is called universal design. Universal design was created in order to make infrastructure accessible for everybody. Its official definition states that it is a design that is usable by all people to the greatest extent possible, without the need for special adaptation or specialized design, which means that it works towards inclusivity for all regardless of abilities or circumstances. Universal design can be applicable to just about everything, including buildings, signage, and technological systems, and it can also be found in city infrastructure with drop-down curbs at sidewalks or automatically opening doors. But we should strive to include all aspects of it, such as making all entrances level. If designed into new construction and major remodels, it can be implemented with minimal changes in cost. So why is universal design important to incorporate into the building code? For one, universal design can benefit everybody, not just people with disabilities. It's easy to use design can benefit older faculty members, mothers with strollers, and young children. Using universal design in our facilities can provide visual representation to the disabled students and the community as a whole of how we care about everybody's needs and not just able-bodied individuals. Additionally, the Clark County School District is the 5th largest school district in the United States, and we can help a lot of people and lead the country by requiring the principles of universal design to be incorporated into all new construction. I've had the opportunity to meet with Mr. Brendan McLaughlin and other members of the Facility Service Unit on this idea, and I'm hoping that we can continue to work towards this goal. We should strive for inclusivity within the learning environment to benefit everybody. Let's redefine the standards for CCSD. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to hear that you've already spoken to Brandon about this issue, because that's what I was just going to try to elaborate on. Is there any other public comment for anything today, or that's on the agenda pertaining to anything? Hearing none. Any more comments from the book board? We're all good? Go ahead, Abraham.
I would just like to formally welcome our trustee, Lola Brooks. It's a pleasure to have you there in the far corner, but thank you for coming. We depend on your representation and your voice, so welcome to the Bond Oversight Committee. We appreciate you. And also to the young lady, thank you. You spoke very well. Continue advocating for things that you believe in. But that's all from me.
Thank you, Abraham. Go ahead, Ms. Williams.
I was going to make a motion to adjourn.
Oh, okay. Okay, that we're.
Waiting for you to
all right.
give us a key.
Go ahead. We're looking for a final motion here on
I'll
item
make a
number 4.
motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to
Gina
adjourn.
Blackman Taylor, for the record, I'll second.
We have a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Hearing, all those
Aye.
against it, say nay. Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, everyone.